I've often spent many a time wondering what lies out there, wondering what faces humanity as we venture into the void that is our existence. I've lived a storied life. I lived in many places. I met many people. I saw many faces. I realized in that dentist's office that there's something more, something greater than myself. And that is why I wrote the most impactful book of all time. And I write this in my diary while I sit in a jail cell in San Luis Obispo, California. I was arrested on August 31st, 1948 for petty theft, and I was ordered to pay a $25 fine. Yeah, I didn't go to jail. Oh, never mind. I've just paid a fine. Never stayed in jail. These are the words. The historic. The wise. The impactful. Dare I say, the loving words of Lafayette Ronald Hubbard.
Wow.
Welcome to the History Out of the Box podcast. That entire thing was ad-libbed. That was a riff. I'm Cam.
I'm Jen.
And this is episode 15. We are in part 2 of the life of L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, that was a fun choice.
A very interesting character. I have a confession.
What is your confession?
I got a little too stressed out last episode.
You were very stressed out talking about this man. One may say you were...
Distraught.
Distraught is a good way to put it.
Traumatized.
A little.
Befuddled.
Okay, that's a good one. You could be
post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, you're just like Ron here. You're using your writing powers.
We both suffer
adjectives.
from myopia.
Oh, that's true.
So,
looks like you guys are a lot
yeah,
alike.
we're the same.
Oh God, I hope not.
Yeah.
Well, that was a beautiful riff.
Thank
Quite
you.
enjoyed it.
I liked the music.
I did too. That was very L. Ron Hubbard, considering he wrote a lot of science fiction in his life. So
Yeah, yes, he did. He wrote a lot of science fiction and he wrote a lot of other things. And just before we hop into the show, into part 2, if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram, on TikTok. I think that's the term they use. I'm old now, so I don't know.
Follow.
Yeah, follow. And also subscribe on YouTube. I know that when this episode comes out, we will likely have the Michael Jackson episode and part 1 of this episode up on YouTube. So go ahead and give us a subscribe, a like, go ahead and comment. Give us your ideas. We strive, as far as I know, and this is maybe opinion, maybe it's fact, maybe no one knows, maybe it's neither. History Out of the Box is the only podcast that strives to connect our listeners with the ghosts of our collective past. So that is what we do with these people.
there's not one other history podcast on this planet.
Yes, we've never,
We're the only ones.
have researched, we have traveled the seas, we have ventured into the deserts. I have explored the various pirate coves.
If you've listened to other episodes, we have access to a time-traveling machine.
We do.
Given to us by the original Chad, a.k.a. George Washington.
And Abraham Lincoln.
Good times. You should go listen to those episodes if you don't know what we're talking about. But we are, as you said, doing part 2 to a very long, very illustrious history
Yes.
of Mr. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, more commonly known as L. Ron Hubbard. You may have heard of his name. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I suggest you do, either audio or video, or both. I recommend both. But you're going to be a little confused where we start out here if you haven't listened to the first one. So make sure you go do that. Pause this now. We'll wait.
Oh, we're doing that. We're doing that bit. We're doing the wait bit.
It's over now.
Yeah,
they paused it.
I'm gonna
They're
have
back.
to cut this now.
I'm
this
glad you
entire
liked.
thing.
I'm glad you liked part 1. Okay. Welcome to part 2.
Should we rehash that? Just start all over.
Yeah, let's just start from the beginning. No. We left off, as you said in your little opening monologue. We left off with Hubbard. He got a $25 fine for some petty theft. He did, and he was dealing with some issues. He actually wrote to the VA to have some psychiatric help. Doesn't look like much happened there, but that is where we left off.
Well, before we jump into the new things, again, I do think we should give a little bit of insight into what we think so far. I know we did that at the very end. My perception was clouded. I had a lot of pauses that I noticed throughout that episode for some reason. My brain was not working as fast as it normally does. So, so far, I'm not sure how I feel in any way other than nothing's changed. I sympathize for the position that he's in a lot of ways, like from the past, in a lot of places he lived, and like he obviously failure was consistently on his table throughout his life. So I respect the grind. I respect the hustle. He got the bread, as they say, and we're at the point. He's getting the bread. So like L. Ron Hubbard should be a rapper for some reason, like an actual rapper, an artist should be named L. Ron Hubbard. What was the other one that you liked, the pseudonym he had that was so good? Geez, it was like
I can go back.
It wasn't and find Remington out. Colt Winchester. That one was very overplayed and honestly kind of generic.
Legionnaire 148.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect rap
Sounds like
name.
a good handle for like
a Reddit,
Call of Duty.
No, a Reddit troll.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That sounds actually.
So what about you? What do you feel? What do you think about all this? Both feeling, thoughts, ideas.
To be very clear, spoiler alert, I'm not a huge fan of the guy. I don't particularly like the way he treats women, his like confidants in business, his friends, his family, basically anyone around him. I think he's mostly, from what I can tell, a bit of a braggart. Okay. And I don't know. So far, it's not so good.
That was very PC of you. I appreciate the lack of explicit language, which is great.
I didn't know him personally. And there are people in this world, people on this earth today who would very much vehemently disagree with me who don't know him either. So, I'm just going off of my little research here.
And to clarify, this is not an episode, neither was the other one, about Scientology specifically. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into Scientology, kind of, sort of.
Very surface level stuff. If you are interested, and we'll say this multiple times, if you're interested in learning more about the specifics of Scientology,
go to us. Yeah, don't look at this episode.
This is not the episode for you. This is specifically about the life of L. Ron Hubbard. And not necessarily the way he likes to frame it in a lot of things he said. We'll touch into that.
What did you say, that he was born on a rainbow, served on a tuna salad sandwich? Was that what you said? Something like that? Something
like that.
Yeah.
I think that was a...
No, it was L. Ron Hubbard. That's what you said. I'm revisionizing history right now.
Right.
So let's jump into it. Let's see what the next the next chapter of Mr. Hubbly Bubbly. What is
Mr. Hubbly Bubbly's
Hubbly
life?
Bubbly? What is his life? What is the next chapter about?
Well, like I said, we left off. He was, getting in trouble for some petty theft, and as we've also stated 1,000 times, it seems like already, this man moved around so much. He was just moving around. And sometimes later on in life, that was not for good reasons. And we'll dive into that more. But he moved again after that, because that petty theft happened in San Luis Obispo, California.
Did he pay it? Did he pay did I pay the bill?
I don't know if he actually paid it. It's a $25 fine. I feel like you could get away with not paying that one if you push it off long enough.
48?
He had some other fines later on in life that he didn't pay.
I mean, $25 in 1948. I know I made like a big hubbub in the last episode about that not being a lot of money, but like I'd have to imagine it was like $100, $200.
I don't know what $25 was in the 48, but
you buy a house for $10. I mean,
yeah,
probably
easy in the late 40s. But they moved again, and this time it was to Savannah, Georgia. Beautiful city. And that was in late 1948. Hubbard actually says that he volunteered at a local psychiatric clinic there, but we aren't really sure if that's true. It's
possibly
kind of hard to
getting help because he had a time where he needed, maybe.
I don't know. Homie tended to stretch the truth a little bit later when he was explaining things going on in his life, so that's what he said. But in early 1949, he began referring to stirrings of a book he was writing that would psychologically cure criminals. And
would they throw themselves out of buildings? Would they go mentally insane?
No, that was
would they commit
MK
suicide?
Ultra.
Oh, gosh. I was referring to his other book. What was it? Excalibur.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
that's right,
where he
that's
would apparently, and this is a reference from the first episode. If you haven't listened to it, go ahead and listen to it. Somebody that he showed the book to, a publisher, read the book Excalibur and then immediately jumped out of a skyscraper window because the book was so revolutionary.
That likely didn't happen, but he said that was what happened.
I don't know how anyone would believe that that was something that happened.
Yeah. Some underreported suicide of some sort, but no, I don't think that happened.
In other news.
Yeah, right. But he said he wanted to cure criminals of their violent, quote, violent traits, right? And he started offering his, quote, research to several professional organizations who all turned him down. They just weren't interested in what he had to say. His editor, John W. Campbell, who's been around for a little bit by this point, he was interested enough in this research Hubbard was doing, and he actually invited Hubbard and his wife, Sarah. Remember, he has his second wife, Sarah, latched to his hip right now.
Yeah. She was hotter and younger.
The occult girl from Los Angeles.
She was all the rage. She was a TikTok model.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Influencer.
Maybe back in the late 40s, she's an influencer girl. No, but Hubbard and Sarah, they moved to Bayhead, New Jersey at the behest of Campbell. They moved again. Oh my gosh.
16? It's got to be like in the teens by
at least. But they moved near his editor because they wanted to be near him and network this research, this idea that Hubbard had on deck. And it was there that Campbell actually introduced Hubbard to Dr. Joseph Winter. And he did this to assist in developing Hubbard's new therapy that he called Dianetics.
Why does that name sound familiar? Why does Dr. Joseph Winter sound familiar? Is he known for something else?
Not that I know of.
I could have swore that I had like a dream.
You've dreamt this.
About Dr. Winter.
Is Hubbard really in your head?
No. Well, we were talking about this earlier today, and apparently you can still buy Dianetics. And color me intrigued, Church of Scientology. I might read the book, maybe. A little explosive for me. It's got a volcano on the front.
Well, see, there's a difference between what you're talking about and what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The one I'm talking about is watered down.
No. We're not even to the book yet. This is the actual study of Dianetics.
Oh, God. So we're like in
You might have
uncharted territory.
If you're just listening to this for the first time, you might have heard of Dianetics because it is a famous book that was written by L. Ron Hubbard. We're not quite to that part yet. This is his research. He's calling it Dianetics, the therapy.
I keep jumping ahead.
It's okay. You're excited.
So on an off note, I'm making the observation that I think Hubbard might have been projecting just a tad.
Maybe.
Because he happened to have an interest in fixing criminals. And at this point in his life, the lines have blurred just a tad.
Okay.
Kind of ripped a few people off, kind of got in trouble in San Luis Obispo. Not sure if he paid that.
He ripped off his wife's ex-boyfriend.
Stole.
Yachts.
Yeah. Well, there's a C word that we use in the first episode that guy would fall into the category. Rhymes with cluck. But yeah, so I would figure he's kind of in that territory. And I know that like in the last episode, he mentioned that he like needed help.
Great.
Do you think he was like exploring trying to fix himself by offering to fix other people?
Well, that's what he says, but I also think it might be kind of true. I think he was desperately trying to figure out some way to help. We talked about it in the first episode in part 1.
American Psycho-y.
His affirmations he was reading to himself.
Like he'd get up in the morning and for some reason his skin would be ultra shiny and he would do like 150 push-ups and he would read an entire newspaper beforehand, look in the mirror and say, I love you so much. I love you. You're the best. Like he would look in the mirror and say those things to himself. He would slick his hair back and then he'd go into the... Wait a second. Before you finish that sentence.
Yeah.
You have never seen Christian Bale's American Psycho.
No. I haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
We have to stop the show.
Well,
we can't continue. Wait. We cannot continue the show any longer. You have to watch this. Because the next people we're gonna start doing creepy people. You have to understand.
I will watch.
It's spooky season.
This is spooky season. I'm talking about L. Ron Hubbard. Pretty
All right.
spooky.
Well, okay. So we've established that he's kind of trying to fix himself through his stuff.
That's my speculation.
Yeah.
I obviously am not in his head, so I don't know. But it is what he kind of said. He was trying to figure out, things to fix. Now, Dianetics. That's what we were talking about. This is his study. And Dr. Joseph Winter was brought on to assist in developing that new therapy. Campbell, even though, remember, Campbell is Hubbard's editor, he told Dr. Winter that Hubbard had actually studied 1,000 cases of different people, which isn't true. Likely not true. And he had studied all these people, and one thing remains absolutely certain, that he had cured every single patient of everything from asthma to eczema to arthritis, etc. And Dr. Winter apparently bought this.
What about suicide?
I guess that just depends on if it was...
Did he cure them of life? I think that's a pivotal point to make, because there are some very large leaps that are being logically leapt to. It's just, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's just very interesting that he...
Well, it's not the first time. I mean, he's conned people. He's conned people his pretty much whole adult life, as far as we can tell. So they convinced this Dr. Winter to come on board. Now, again, not a Dianetics expert either. Like, if you're looking for an in-depth thing into Dianetics, this isn't the place to be for that either. You probably want to go to that Scientology podcast we've talked about, okay? But from what I've gathered, this is a very, very general, basic explanation in the most layman terms ever, okay? So stick with me. Dianetics focuses on the brain recording every experience you've ever had, awake or asleep, and the bad experiences are stored in what are called engrams, and they're triggered later in life, okay? This causes your physical and emotional stress, your reactions, that just any reaction you have are caused by all of these repressed memories. And auditing, which is, remember, you've seen this probably on shows where they're holding the two things in their hands and they're talking to someone with an electromagnetic thing between them. Okay, so auditing is when a person is regressed through those bad experiences, and they are eventually, what they want to be is called clear. They're clear of all these negative things that are physically affecting them or mentally affecting them. And clear is when you have a perfect mind, you have photographic memory, you improve your IQ, your eyesight, everything. And that's basically what he would call, Hubbard, the perfect human form, a clear person.
This sounds very, very similar in a lot of ways to transhumanism and eugenics. Very similar. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do they have any way of testing any of that? Do they test any of it?
You will have to call your local Scientologist
I'm afraid
and
to
ask,
do that.
because I don't know.
I'm afraid to do that. I have a lot of repressed future trauma from calling them. So I'm just going to not do that and become clear in my life by not having to go down that path.
Yeah.
And this is where I open up the ceremonial beer.
There you go.
Yeah. Wow. Yum.
Well,
Oktoberfest beer.
Again, that is the very, very basic explanation of Dianetics.
So what happens if you go through this and you get clear?
I don't know.
But then you do something silly and catch something that was really prevalent over the last 2 years.
We should see what the stats are.
What are the stats? That would be interesting. But yeah, okay. So it's very. This is very. Look, I want to be nice. It's very creative.
That's very nice of you to say, creative. Because the Journal of American
JAMA.
What?
The Journal of American JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association.
Yes, yeah, so I thought you were trying to say my name and it got all garbled.
No, JAMA. I didn't have an aneurysm. JAMA. Yeah.
Yes, the Journal of American Medical Association and the American Journal of Psychiatry, they both rejected Hubbard's findings, experimental research.
In Hubbard's defense, they do accept things now that are quite interesting. So
Well,
who knows?
The study was then changed to, quote, astounding science fiction. And Hubbard and his wife, Sarah, Dr. Winter, and the editor, Mr. Campbell, they established the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And in April of 1950, that was also shortly after the birth of his second daughter, was Sarah Alexis Valerie.
So this study is categorized as astounding science fiction.
Yeah.
So it's fake.
Well, depends.
Science fiction
on who
means
you
it's
ask.
not real. That is literal definition of science fiction. Like if I read one of his wonderful, what's the other book that he has?
Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield
Or
Earth.
Battlestar Galactica. The battle.
Don't credit that to L. Ron Hubbard.
Battle of the Five Armies. I mean, if I read all those things, they're categorized under science fiction. So in the writing itself, it is categorized as astounding science fiction. They might want to change that. Yeah. I mean, it's a little late. I mean, it's a...
Just look it up on Amazon and see what it says now.
72 years late, but like...
It's on Amazon. If you are free to buy the book we'll talk about
I might do it. I might do it just because it'll be fun.
Well, on May 9th of 1950, Hubbard's companion book, as we've been talking about, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, was published by Hermitage House and launched a decade's worth of lectures and more books on the subject. And it was initially very successful. Again, totally available even today to purchase on Amazon if you would like to read, which I know my co-host here is absolutely itching to do.
I just like really creative things. I like macaroni paintings. I like it when someone makes music that probably should never be listened to because it's very creative and it's something to be admired because they attempted or they succeed or they failed. One of the two or three, all of them. It's just fun. And I see that as being just very creative.
Well, it like I said, it was a hit. It was deemed a cult classic. It was selling, 4,000 copies a week. It sold 55,000 copies by the August of 1950. And it was translated into several languages. It spawned hundreds of, quote, auditing groups. And that was all around the country. And the press, scientific medical community, they were not impressed with Dianetics at all. They considered it utter garbage, just gibberish, and that didn't matter. The public, the normal public seemed to love it.
So side thought that I think might be very interesting to just observe. What if this was a PSYOP?
Define PSYOP.
Government imposed experiment.
Okay.
So like MK Ultra. What if this was a government imposed version of MK Ultra to see what the people would believe? And then it spawned.
Oh wow!
Into
Tinfoil Hat is coming out right now.
Into an actual thing that is now an entity that covers the fact that Tom Cruise and John Travolta are aliens.
Oh, I think that is exactly what this all leads to eventually.
Yes.
I'm kidding. But for some context, just to prove how well liked this Dianetics thing was at the time, Aldous Huxley, the author of Brave New World, great book, he actually got audited by Hubbard. Several famous writers of the time, like Theodore Sturgeon, A.E. von Voigt, they actually became trained auditors. They were there doing it themselves, and the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation branched out to open locations in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, even Honolulu, Hawaii. Yeah, so we're moving fast.
Okay. I'm not gonna, no, I'm not gonna do the same thing where I have these like moments of mental lapses. We're going.
You going?
We're going into
going?
it.
Okay.
So how much was it?
Expensive. It was about $500 in 1950 to
Holy crap.
to take an auditor's course to become an auditor. It was $500. And there was no oversight over the money coming in and out of this foundation, which, shocker, one of those black hole type situations. For example, one time Hubbard took $56,000 of 1950 money. So we're talking about $630,000 in today's money.
So $500 was like like a couple $1,000s at that time.
Yeah. Without any explanation, he took this $56K out, was never accounted for. New Jersey's branch actually showed 1 month's income for the branch to be a full $90,000, and $70,000 of that income was unaccounted for. Just not on the books. No idea where it went.
Wow.
As someone who my daylight job is in finance, this makes me want to cry out of the stress this would cause whoever their accountant was.
I'm glad I opened a beer because it's stressing me out.
But Hubbard was a popular and charismatic guy. We've talked about this. Everyone just seemed to like him. He got away with so much. He wrote, he lectured, he trained, all in this Dianetics psychology thing he was doing. And it seemed like he just claimed the attention of everyone in every room he stepped in. It was amazing, according to people who spoke to him.
But they were all in the group, though. So, like...
people leave the group.
I mean, I'm sure all those people would have said the same thing about what's-his-face, the guy down in South America that, like, had a bunch of people. Like, we should talk about him eventually. Eventually. Not next, because that's too depressing. But I think we should talk about Aleister Crowley next, because that fits right in the spooky season. Yeah,
Well, that was who he followed.
Well...
L. Ron Hubbard was when he was
Mr.
in
Crowley.
Pasadena with Sarah's ex-boyfriend doing their thing.
Yeah.
They were followers of Aleister Crowley.
Mr. Crowley. Great Ozzy Osbourne song.
Yeah, well, all good things come to an end, right? In Los Angeles, August of 1950.
Los Angeles.
That's where it ends.
That's...
It's okay, we can say that we're from there. But Hubbard was giving a presentation to a group of 6,000 people in Los Angeles in August of 1950. He was demonstrating a, quote, clear person, right? This subject failed to recall a single formula in physics, which was the subject that she was majoring in, or the color of Hubbard's tie when his back was turned, which is very much against what is expected of a clear person who has no issues in their brain at all.
This is just three card Monty. I mean, that's literally what it is. Is it like, so I don't know what it's, I'm using that term very loosely. It's just deception. It's like magic. That's what
likely.
I mean, that's literally, they probably rehearsed the entire thing beforehand. It's probably a chosen subject that they had known before. I mean, you see this with a lot of really, I use the churches with the quotes around it. You see this with a lot of very interestingly charismatic churches where people will simultaneously get healed randomly. Not to suggest that does or doesn't happen. There's just some where it's... Yeah, that's not speculative.
Well, this was obviously like devastating on stage, right? Yeah. And doubts began to steepen.
He had a Kanye Taylor Swift moment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Even Dr. Winter was having enough. By
now.
Yeah, by now.
Wow.
Well, remember, this is all during 1950.
What type of doctor is Dr. Winter? Do we know?
A psychiatrist.
Go back to school.
Well, anyway, Dianetics was splitting into different occult practices, like a regular religion would at the time. This wasn't a religion either. Remember, this is not a religion yet. This is pre-Scientology.
Yeah, so at this point, he's just selling snake oil.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And Dr. Winter, he had not seen any real scientific research. He was starting to get pretty speculative. He's like, this Hubbard guy, dude, just telling people to guess the color of his tie. It's not working.
It's been 4 years, and I'm now coming to this conclusion.
It's only been a couple months, really. Yeah. But people were starting to run with this and like splinter off into sects, of like doing their own things. And the Elizabeth, New Jersey branch was quickly falling into financial ruin. The LA branch was $200,000 in debt by the end of 1950. Hubbard's publisher, Dr. Winter, and even his editor, Mr. Campbell, the sort of brainchild of this whole thing, who got them to move up to New Jersey in the first place, they all resigned under acrimonious circumstances. They blamed Hubbard for all of financial disparity. They blamed him directly, and all of the branches were closed by the summer of 1951. And the problems don't end there.
This would be such a fascinating movie. Like honestly.
I think there's a lot of pressure within Hollywood to not make this a movie unless Scientology made it, and then this won't be part of the movie.
Here's the thing. All Scientology has to do, if they save their if they save the whole thing, is they go into, rather than being a religion, they re-identify as a charity, and then they just say it's a way of life. No longer a religion, way of life. They have some self-awareness, and then they can create an excellent movie starring Nicolas Cage and Hugh Jackman about Dianetics. It would be hilarious.
Nicolas Cage would be an excellent L. Ron Hubbard.
He would be phenomenal. And here's the thing: he doesn't have to be a bad guy. Like, he will be like the kind of like the
goofy guy who actually sends a submarine chaser after
he's the,
something.
What's the term in writing? It's not protagonist, antagonist. It's the anti-hero. He's the anti-hero. So he'll be a hilarious comedy. It can literally end with the financial problems happening, and then all of a sudden, then the church can be like, oh, and this is what happened, and that's the rest is history. And they can do a bunch of different clips of all the people who are criticizing them, and boom, they win. That's my whole thing. Because then if they say they're not a religion, then they can have more people that might be, just for the fact of it being fun, be a part of it. It could be like a club, an expensive club. Do people join Herbalife all the time? It's the same thing.
Well, I mean,
I've solved your problems.
They might hit you up after this. Who knows? And ask for advice.
Let's hope not.
I hope not.
Let's hope not.
Listen,
this is a castle.
We live in America.
No, we live in a castle doctrine state. You stay away from us. Oh, I can defend myself here.
No, I'm saying we live in America. They have the right to believe whatever.
Sure, I just mean that it's. Look, we live in a time where people are skeptical of everything, especially things that are really, really expensive. And the best way to make it less skeptical is to take yourself less seriously.
Yeah, well, this isn't about Scientology. We're not even talking about Scientology.
I know. I'm just trying to solve their problems because I like solving problems. Anyway,
you're such a guy.
Back to the problems starting.
Well, they're starting, or have they been going? And we're just going to keep going.
I'm telling you, he
lived a lot of life. Like, there's a lot going on in his life at all times.
I'm surprised he wasn't, like, entirely crippled by this point, like mentally and physically and emotionally.
He was clear. Cam.
No, he was just very resilient. But sure.
Sarah, his wife, and Hubbard were at odds.
You don't say. Was it because of just general odds, or was he...
Well, he had never seemed to hear of the phrase happy wife, happy life in his entire life. So, unfortunately, yeah. He had begun to have an affair with his 20-year-old PR assistant.
That's why.
Yeah. He was having an affair again. And Sarah had begun an affair with Dianetics auditor Miles Hollister. So we're not exactly...
what a
they were
of the same people.
Peas in a pod, yes.
Yeah.
And in retaliation, because only Hubbard can sleep around, all right? He wrote the FBI, and he portrayed the couple as a communist infiltrators in 1951 of March. So he got mad because he was cheating on his wife, and his wife was cheating on him. So he wrote the FBI and said that his wife was no.
Oh, his wife and Miles.
Sorry, I said that incorrectly.
His wife and Miles.
He said that the wife and the one she was cheating on him with, Miles Hollister, were communist infiltrators. He wrote the FBI that to get back at her.
Interesting tactic to play with the PSYOP that you're a part of, but sure.
Yeah, well, what's hilarious is that the FBI didn't take him seriously, and the letter is actually annotated in FBI records as, quote, appears mental by the agent who had to read it. So, I mean, nothing happened because of that by the FBI, at least.
What if he was telling the truth?
Well,
again, just... Church of Scientology or anyone associated, if you have the wherewithal, it would be hilarious to just make a gregariously out of context, but also in context comedy about this. It could be self-effacing.
You can even say, this is what non-Scientologists believe. It's so funny.
But here's the thing is, what if it was real? I mean, this is the thing. You take it from the perspective of Hubbard and you make it entirely real to him from the viewer's perspective. So it's like this very... like almost grandiose, like larger than life type of experience, and it could be literally seen as a case study not only of Hubbard from an entertainment perspective, but also from the generalized craziness. Because I can't think of a better term. I'm not trying to be derogatory, but I can't think of a better term for this individual's life so far. It is Willy Wonka style crazy.
Well, we're not done.
Yeah, let's keep
We're
going.
going to keep going. Hubbard and 2 other staff members could not be deterred by the FBI non-compliance with his letter of warning. Communist wife, right? No. They
happy communist wife, happy communist life.
No. So Hubbard and the staff members, they seized Sarah and his still infant daughter. They forced him to go to San Bernardino, California, and he unsuccessfully tried to find a doctor to have her committed as insane. Didn't work out, but those were the good old 1950s. Wifeys, you better be a good to your husband or he's going to put you in an insane asylum.
Yeah, make him a sandwich or he slaps you around. That's how it goes.
But, should have been born in a different generation. The 50s just seems so fun.
Well, the 60s is just, the same thing, really. It's just different. You like that? You like that?
I was just about to say something very controversial, and I held it back.
Thank God you didn't.
At the last second. But anyways.
We try our best to be close. Appropriate here. PC.
I tried. But yeah, he couldn't find a doctor. So he released his wife, but then he kidnapped his daughter, and he took her to, drumroll, where would a communist never go?
Where would they never go, or where would they go?
No, remember, he's not a communist. He told the FBI he's trying to help.
Cuba.
He took his daughter to Cuba, Havana, Cuba.
Did he just leave her there?
Well, no, he took her there. And no, he didn't leave her there. But the mother, he left back in the States. And the mother freaked out.
Wait, so is Hubbard the communist? Is that the plot twist here? Is he's actually the communist?
No.
Are we sure? Because this is all PSYOP, remember? This is all PSYOP.
That's your speculation. Your tinfoil hat is firmly in place.
I think I'm correct. I'm getting smells. MK Ultra. I'm getting the smells.
Well, in the divorce filed by Sarah on April 23rd, 1951, Sarah accuses him of beating her, strangling her, sleep depriving her, kidnapping her, and exhortation to commit suicide on a regular basis during their marriage. Her daughter was finally returned to her in June after she agreed to sign a written statement written by L. Ron Hubbard himself that read, quote, "The things I have said about L. Ron Hubbard in courts and the public prints have been grossly exaggerated or entirely false. I have not at any time believed otherwise that L. Ron Hubbard is a fine and brilliant man." So she rescinded all of her critique and got her daughter back.
You know what's funny?
Which, in my opinion, makes total sense.
You know what's funny about things like that where they have like the person that actually writes their thing? Normally a normal person who doesn't like somebody wouldn't compliment them at the end of a sentence.
Well, that's why it's funny. It's like
he can't resist. He cannot resist feeding his ego. And this is where like that aside, this is where the movie, back to the movie premise, would be really fascinating because it could be like this like Tim Burton-esque exploration of narcissism. Because that is literally like, look, you kidnap your daughter. You kidnap your daughter. Follow me on this. You kidnap your daughter, you bring her down to Cuba. Because that's not obvious for communists at that time, or any time really. And then you force your wife to write a letter in which that she takes back everything that she said and anything that allegations she had towards you. And then you compliment yourself at the end of the letter.
Brilliant.
To give your daughter back to your wife. I mean, this is the most like 1 + 1 = 2 formula of all time.
Yeah. I know. It's crazy.
It's so lazy.
But it worked. It worked.
Well, it worked in the 50s.
Here's the thing. He basically held his daughter hostage against his mom. And you know what? Maybe not in this extreme of way, at least as often, but this happens every day here in the United States still today. And that's a whole other topic.
People write books?
No, people using their kids against each other.
Well, yeah, this is a history podcast.
If you want to hear my hot take, you better become my friend and sit in my kitchen while I make you dinner.
Or
that's the only way you're going to hear my hot take on
Or
that.
you could just listen to our sister podcast, The Wolf and Bull. We happen to explore things like that all the time.
Yes.
We are also both co-hosts in that show. So, but yeah, let's
get the real.
Let's stay away from the ultra depressing stuff and go to the even more depressing stuff by talking about Dianetics further.
Well, all that drama, all that crime didn't stop Dianetics from basically collapsing in on itself.
Oh, darn.
But millionaire businessman Don Purcell. I can't pronounce names. I think we've established that over the last 15 episodes. I'm sorry. I try. But all was well in Wichita, Kansas when this businessman said, "I want to help you Ronald L. Lafayette, Ronald Hubbard. I want to help.
You having a bout of lysdexiism, commonly referred to as dyslexia?
I'm channeling this businessman, Don Purcell.
Well, you're just speaking like Yoda.
I don't know. When I think, for some reason, I'm thinking of a 1950s businessman in Wichita, and I'm like imagining a top hat and a monocle. And
Don Draper.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
That's not, well, no.
That is literally who I'm thinking of. Don Draper from, did you?
Don't ask. No, I haven't seen it. You're thinking Mad Men, right? Oh my God. No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, well.
But maybe things were looking up. Not so much, no. But soon fell apart after the debts from the previous locations. Remember, they were all closed. They needed to be collected, and the law was coming after them now. They need to collect those debts. So Hubbard instead established Hubbard College in Wichita. And he was meanwhile fighting Purcell in court over the rights to the foundation's intellectual property because they now both wanted it.
Is it really that easy? Wait a second. So I said this guy is like Machiavelli. I'm changing, even though probably bad comparison. I said that in the last episode. He's a Renaissance man. He has literally done everything. He started his own college. He's founded his own religion. He has been a part of the Navy. Track record, suspect track record. Mined for gold, mined for minerals. Looked for pirates in the Caribbean in the 30s when clearly the
he was looking for things to put in a museum.
I have to imagine the pirate trade in the 30s was not doing well. He was basically Nathan Drake and wanted to be Nathan Drake. Failed a lot of the time.
Yeah, there's a distinction there.
He wrote multiple books. This guy, is it really that easy? Can I just literally declare that I start a college?
I mean, there was probably a little more complication to that. Remember, this is the 1950s. Regulations, compliance issues, they've changed a lot since then.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, there's
Internet's ruined everything. I said that last episode. Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
Actually true. Anyway.
That's true.
Okay. So Hubbard College.
Hubbard College in Wichita.
What in God's name do they teach at Hubbard College?
Well, not much for very long because Hubbard met a new bride during this time, 18-year-old Mary Sue Whipp. She was a staff member at his new college. They were married and the college was then immediately closed.
How old was he?
Much older than 18, yeah.
He
tended to like him young. And yes, that is me making...
Very DiCaprio-esque.
Not even an assumption because an 18-year-old...
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. Mary Sue Whipp. That's his third wifey. Yeah, here she comes. They then moved to beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, where he started a Hubbard Association of Scientologists International to promote his newest venture, Scientology.
Again, I am not surprised.
Scientology's birthplace is Phoenix, Arizona, officially. Isn't that fun?
Not surprised. Anyway.
AKA, the definition, basically, of Scientology is the study and handling of the spirit in relation to itself, universes, and other life. Try dissecting that one.
So everything.
Sure.
Literally everything.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about his involvement with Scientology. We finally got there. And if you know anything about L. Ron Hubbard, besides the fact he was an author of some science fiction books, you may know that he was the head of Scientology.
A very popular science fiction book club.
It's also a religion here in the United States and is famously known as the religion of choice for those of the likes of like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, and, also dissenters who have left, and Leah Remini, who has her own show, who talks about the inside scoop of Scientology and its negative aspects. So if you're interested in that, I suggest you go check it out.
If both of them were to leave, it wouldn't exist. Like on a serious, like
all
on a
I
very
gotta say
serious
is
note.
Top Gun Maverick is the best.
No, I'm just
ever.
saying. Like we've discussed this off the off camera.
Yeah.
What I sound like a radio host. We've discussed this intimately prior to this show ever forming, prior to the Wolf and Bull, prior to anything to do with any of this. Mm-hmm. And I've always thought,
I'm so sorry. I've hit the microphone like 5 times.
Deafening. I have always thought that if Cruise and Travolta were to actually leave,
but I don't know if they ever will. Personally,
they could. 2022. No one's surprised by anything anymore. We are in the perfect time for both of them to leave. Like what could
maybe they don't want
short of murder, And even then, most people, meh. I mean, people have been famous in other countries for eating people and have gotten away with it. But short of murder, I can't think of a single thing that specific entity, because Leah Remini talks about blackmail and all that. I can't think of a single thing that most people alive today in the millennial and Zoomer and even Gen X and Boomer categories, I can't think of a single thing that most of them would actually really even care about coming out from those people. Because one, Tom Cruise, universally loved. We can talk about, he gets everything for free. He would get everything for free if he left. And he would still get roles. He would still get movies made. He would still have all the power that he currently has because he's a phenomenal actor. I think he seems like a decent-ish guy. We don't know. Separate from this thing. I'm just saying, and this is all, if again, back to my premise, if you're listening, if they rebranded into a charity club, not a problem anymore. Well, I'm just saying, it just seems like I can't think of a single thing. Because literally everything has happened. In our lifetimes, we've seen so many things happen, short of end of civilization. I don't think anyone would be surprised. I really don't.
Well, again, there are Scientology podcasts out there, pro and con. You should go listen to whichever one you suit. All right? This is about L. Ron Hubbard and his involvement, okay? You ready? Okay. While the Church of Scientology says that this discovery was a new line of research by Hubbard, the discovery of what's called thetans, that's a spiritual being, non-Scientologists claim that this was Hubbard's latest attempt to reassert control after losing Dianetics' success. That was very, very quick and fast, right? It was famously said that at a party in 1953 or 1954, an acquaintance of Hubbard said that while Hubbard was complaining about not making enough money writing, the acquaintance said to him, what you really need to do is create a religion. And so the idea was born. There's a lot of Scientology that I'm not even going to attempt to dissect. I know it's tempting, but it's not what I'm here for today. Look it up and listen to another podcast. But first, it was a very, very small beginning for Scientology. A 70-hour lecture.
Wait a second. A 70 hour
I'm assuming they had coffee breaks and sleep breaks.
70 hours. So it was a convention.
Basically, yeah.
It's not a lecture. It's a convention.
Yeah, of 36 people. 38 people, actually. That was the amount of people who showed up December 1952 in Philadelphia.
Was it scripted?
I don't know.
70 hours, man. That is... That's a lot from one person. That is biblical.
He could talk. He knew how to talk. But Nibs, his oldest child, remember, this was from way back when. We talked about him in episode 1, or part 1, excuse me. The now 18-year-old son, Nibs, came to Phoenix to be with his dad after having a hard time in high school. And he joined Scientology and became a professor in the subject.
It's like becoming a professor in Cabbage Patch Kids.
Hubbard also became the father of a third daughter at this point, September 24th, 1952, with his with his third wife, Diana Meredith DeWolf Hubbard.
Was his third daughter.
Sorry.
He had 3 wives.
He's got too many kids, too many wives.
A lot of concubines.
Okay, Diana Meredith DeWolf Hubbard was his third daughter and his first with his third wife. Does that make sense? He had 3 wives.
They have child support back then?
I mean, do you think L. Ron Hubbard paid child support? I'm going to let you
I'd like to hope that he did. I'm objective. He seems like a stand-up cat.
Okay. Well, I'm just making a guess, I guess. But, yeah, he had his first daughter with his third wife and... Third daughter. Jeez, it's too confusing. There's too many kids. But anyway, he therefore, shortly after, got a doctorate from an unaccredited Sequoia University in
I love how
February
you mixed
1953.
therefore and shortly after, which would have been thereafter. I really enjoyed that.
The kids are getting to me. He has
it's
so
a little
many
late. It's past Jen's
and
bedtime.
So many baby mamas. I can't.
He did. It was like a Degrassi episode mixed with Maury mixed with what's the one where they all fight in the show?
Jerry Springer.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's like Jerry Springer.
Anyway, he proposed setting up spiritual guidance centers and charging customers $500 for 24 hours of auditing in the new religion of Scientology. 24 hours. Not all at once. I'm assuming you go in. It's like sessions, right?
It's people paying for being... This is like what they do down in Guantanamo Bay. This
Maybe
is,
not quite the same.
No, I have to imagine there's some psychological aspects of this where it's traumatizing because you're in a room. I would assume you have breaks for 24 hours auditing with someone who doesn't know you, utilizing a piece of technology to cleanse yourself of... I mean, if you are that distressed with your life, you must have done like Epstein or Dahmer level atrocities.
No.
Honestly.
Not quite. I think people just want to feel better, right?
Go read a book. Go
They did. They read Dianetics.
Touch some grass. Like go talk to a friend. Like go get a drink. Do sports. Go to the gym. There's so many other things that you could do for less than at this time $500 in the 50s
for 24 hours
to feel better.
Well, some of the auditors began dressing as clergymen.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And in the 1950s, the movement was quickly growing. He marketed the religion with medical claims, saying that they were investigating polio cases, which at the time was a devastating illness, pre-polio vaccine. And, that's one way to really tear at the heartstrings of people. It was becoming hugely profitable as well. The gross income of $250,000 in 1957, or would be $2.5 million today, was Scientology. And he and Mary Sue had 3 more children: Geoffrey Quinton Macaulay, Mary Suzette Rochelle, and Arthur Ronald Conway.
He would have a Joffrey. That doesn't surprise me.
Oh my gosh. He purchased Saint Hill Manor, by the way, which was an 18th century country house in Sussex. Yes, the United Kingdom. This man is everywhere all the time. I don't get it. But by the 1960s, he was world renowned. He was, but then going to live on his fleet of ships, which we will talk more about very shortly.
I think we should let our listeners and ourselves take a break at this point.
Yeah, I think I need one. Palate cleanser.
He now lives on a fleet of ships instead of the English countryside. Had he ever been to the English countryside? Did he buy this via Zillow online? Obviously, it didn't exist back then. Well, but I just...
You know someone who knows someone who knows someone, right?
In
Networking.
the 60s...
He was a great networker.
The English countryside in the 60s had to have been...
Picturesque.
Picturesque.
Picturesque is what I'm looking for.
Beautiful, quiet, quaint, wonderful. You could probably smell the redcoats.
Yeah, you could smell them.
You could smell the battles that George Washington, the original Chad, fought in.
I'm just ghost hovering over L. Ron Hubbard saying, "I condemn thee."
Probably, yeah, right.
Hubbard had a few controversies, as you can imagine. Like, we haven't even dug into any of them yet, right? No, we have. But Hubbard believed that Scientology was being infiltrated by the U.S. government via spies. And
excellent cover for something that was a psyop. Just saying.
He introduced lots of policies to the religion that were very invasive. Again, I won't go into too many details, but they're out there if you want to do some digging yourself. But
oh boy.
They interrogated members with questions like, quote, "Have you practiced homosexuality? Have you thought unkind thoughts about Mr. Hubbard? Or did you come to this earth for evil purposes?" Which is always a great question to hear during a therapy session, I'm sure.
Imagine being an evil entity that falls for that. If it is an evil entity, do you think that it would answer the question?
Like, you got me.
Darn.
Well, it's also interesting to note that he heavily advocated against Richard Nixon in the 1960 election. Just an interesting thing to mention, which...
He went for the other guy?
I'm just surprised. I don't know. For some reason, that surprised me, but I'm not sure why.
He strikes me... Yeah, well, Tricky Dick was kind of in the same... Cat, that was his nickname. Kind of in the same... in a lot of ways. In a very similar, maybe side-adjacent category of human.
I don't know much about Richard Nixon, to be honest, so I can't really throw my
There's a reason why his nickname was that.
Well, the FBI had a lengthy file on this guy. Okay. And in 1958, the IRS withdrew
Your
the church's
exact notes did not say that, but it's still funny. Anyway, honk honk.
I called him something else in the notes. But
Honk,
anyways, the IRS said that Hubbard and his family were unreasonably profiting from this nonprofit, and the FDA took action against the religion's medical claims, and they seized tons of material, including pills in bottles labeled as radiation cures, polio cures, and Hubbard was pissed. He and his religion were suddenly in an unfavorable position. In Australia, they accused them of blackmail, brainwashing. They accused Hubbard of displaying strong characteristics of paranoid schizophrenia and delusions of grandeur. They said that.
No, he didn't do that. He didn't have those issues.
The United Kingdom no longer allowed Scientologists to enter the country, and Hubbard was...
They were basically terrorists before terrorists.
Well, Hubbard's visa was refused, his renewal, and inquiries were launched in South Africa, New Zealand, and Canada.
How did this guy become Jason Bourne?
I know, right? That's what he wanted.
How?
Remember,
how?
This is the guy who dropped out of college after failing on a museum.
So here's something that's interesting. Something that's interesting. All this happened in the 50s, right?
50s, 60s.
And it's now 2020. It's now 2022.
Mm-hmm.
What in God's name has changed to allow for the designation that was once revoked to have come back?
I don't know, but it seems like we always take one step forward and like 30 steps back these days.
Look. It's just, we can talk about the ruling. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that into some base, or maybe not. We could talk about, that would be an interesting thing to broach one day, maybe on Wolf and Bull. We could talk about that and how easy it would be to just...
How they got their stuff
I don't know.
back. Yeah.
Go back and revoke it. Mm-hmm. We could do that.
It happened, to be clear. It did happen. They got it back. But Hubbard started requiring Scientologists to disconnect from people outside of their religion, suppressive people. Like, anyone who talked bad about Scientology was labeled a suppressive person.
Fun fact for anyone listening who might happen to be involved with anything that uses terms like suppressive. If you use terms like suppressive in relation to people just by their thoughts, you might not be in the right thing.
Well, yeah, that's when it started. He was getting a little paranoid, it seems. And he wrote a long list of crimes and high crimes that are now punishable within the religion. Again, you can look these up yourselves. I'm not going to go through all of them. But enemies of the religion, he now insisted, should be harassed and sued. They were big on the suing, and they still are. So, again, yeah, it's crazy what could happen. But, that's life. But by 1966, he founded the Sea Org. It was a group of Scientologist volunteers who became a professional group of seamen. Sea Org. Again, remember, he went to go live on his fleet of ships. So this was his, his new project, so to speak.
The 12-year-old in me reared his ugly head there for a second.
He got some ships, including what was one called the Enchanter. It was a 40-ton schooner, Schooner. I thought I said that wrong. Again, we've been over this. My pronunciations need some work.
Schooner.
But the second ship was the Avon River. It was an old trawler. And the Royal Scotsman. It was an old Irish cattle ferry that L. Ron Hubbard now lived on. Which, he seemed to love the sea. So I guess it makes sense.
Being around a lot of seamen.
Yeah. The organization.
Professional seamen.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was now Commodore of the Sea Org.
It was too easy. I'm sorry. I apologize. Look, very, very interesting choice. Methinks, I sound like that very unpopular Star Wars character that will remain
Jar Jar
unnamed.
Binks.
Well, I was named him. Remained unnamed. Methinks he decides to be on the sea for very particular legal reasons.
Well,
maybe I speculate.
Well,
making an observation. Neither true or false.
What did he do while he was Commodore of the Sea Org? Nothing really. I mean, like nothing specific. They just kept moving. That was their whole thing. They kept
As one
moving
does on the open sea.
because his enemies were after him. And if they found him, it would be the beginning of what he sometimes said was a nuclear holocaust. Yeah. Well,
He
that's
actually
a bit
used-
dramatic. A
he
bit
used that-
of a flair with that warning. But
Who's his own?
yeah.
Interesting.
But they were on an 8-year voyage traveling in the Eastern Atlantic to the Mediterranean Sea, all over, all around. And the church was sending him about $15,000 a week, which would be equivalent of $121K in today's money, about thereabouts.
$121,000 a week.
Can you imagine living off that kind of money? What would you even do?
Do you buy
I don't know if like
with that much money in the 60s?
You know when you hear those like brain teasers where like if someone were to give you
Yes.
20 grand every day and you had to spend it, I'd be like, I'd run out of things. Like every day and you have to spend all of it.
At
Like,
that point, you just
keep loading the guac on my Chipotle. I don't know what else to tell you.
Well, at that point, you start burying it, quote unquote,
Oh,
like a pirate does.
Yes.
Which I have to imagine is what he was. Which I would have to speculate could possibly have been happened at any point in any time, somewhere, somehow, in relation to anyone named or similarly named Lafayette Ronald Hubbard.
Well, millions were being transferred to bank accounts in Switzerland.
Yes.
You know, that's a common thing with a lot of people. He was living the high life. He had lots of volunteers. Remember, Sea Org members are not paid. Or they were not paid.
There's
I don't know
another
about today,
term.
but they
There's
were not.
another word for that
Yeah,
that I won't say.
they were volunteers. He tried establishing himself and his crew in Corfu and then later again in Morocco. However, both failed because he got caught up in the local politics in both those places and he ended up having to flee because it got a little dicey.
Where the heck is Corfu?
Corfu,
Sounds like another planet.
Mediterranean, I believe. Yeah.
Interesting.
You're thinking of Star Wars. You're all hung up on the Jar Jar Binks comment. Well, he was during this time writing all the doctrines that South Park made so famous. You know the ones. And he was trying to get more people in the Sea Org, but a lot of people say now when you look into, you know, online, you're going to see people say it was terrible conditions in the Sea Org. Except for the Commodore's Messenger Organization, which was a group of young girls, that's what they said, and they would wear halter tops, hot pants, and they would run errands for Mr. L. Ron Hubbard, including dressing him, lighting his cigarettes, like a little harem kind of around him
Well, they
at all
were
times.
Volunteers.
Fun job.
Yeah,
They're a great network. It's great for your resume.
It was Coyote Ugly.
So, you did mention being on the run. On the lam, so to speak.
So they say.
So they say.
I'm trying my best to make this very, very objective.
It is.
No one knows. Was he just traveling for fun? Was he exploring?
Well, one can make the argument that he had a lot of
You're
legal
not picking
threats.
up what I'm putting down.
Yeah. Okay.
He might have been finding pirate treasure. We don't know.
Well, yeah. He was dealing with a lot of legal threats from all over the place.
Yeah.
And
Supposedly.
Well, no. Other countries were legally coming after him. I see you.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. Okay.
Yeah.
The French charged him and Scientology with fraud, and he ran from being extradited, and he hid in Queens, New York in the 70s. He then returned to his boat in 1973.
He was aware that the French gave us Lady Liberty rape.
They're all hiding in the statue, waiting for him like a Trojan
well,
horse.
Everyone knows it's a Trojan horse. Rick and Morty talk about that.
That's true.
I'm just saying, it is literally, they would look there first.
Well, it was also said he now at this point in his life was becoming obese. He was a chain smoker. He had a growth on his face that was kind of
Specifically
alarming.
his forehead.
Yeah. And in 1978, he actually suffered a pulmonary embolism and he went into a coma, but actually turned out to be okay, which is kind of shocking. It's a really sad thing to happen no matter who it is. And some would say, you know, the thetans or something had to do with that.
Right.
But he decided to go to good old Florida, become a Florida man. And he established a base there for his fleet after many places overseas were either actively pursuing charges against him or turning him away at port because of They didn't want anything to do with him. And he moved into a hotel, the Daytona Beach, or in Daytona Beach, Florida. And it was in October of 1975 when he then decided that the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, Florida was the secret land base for Scientology. Unknowingly to the hotel, by the way. And Clearwater, Florida is still headquarters for Scientology today. They have a big building. If you Google Scientology, probably one of the first pictures that's going to come up of the big building. It says Scientology right across the top. And it's in Clearwater, Florida. But he was under the radar. He was still avoiding, the police. And eventually he went to Culver City, California in 1976. La Quinta after that. The guy moves around so much. I can't believe how many times this guy moved. He just lives out of a suitcase, apparently. Because I cannot believe, the stress involved with moving that much stresses me out just thinking about it. But,
yeah. I just don't understand. When you're making $121,000 a week, you could literally live anywhere.
You're just hopping from Airbnb to
especially
Airbnb.
in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, in a tragic series of events, though, his son Quentin committed suicide, and he was a member of the Sea Org when this happened, and that happened in shortly after he went to California. But the Snow White program, you may have heard of this before. It was directed by Hubbard to remove negative files from the White House about him and Scientology. And they did infiltrate the IRS and the Department of Justice. 2 agents were actually caught with wiretapping material, burglary tools, incriminating documents. And Hubbard was never prosecuted, but his wife, Mary Sue, yes, that one, the young one, the one he just married not that long ago, was directly indicted and sent to federal prison for conspiracy along with 10 other people in the organization for the Snow White program, directed by L. Ron Hubbard. Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that Charles Manson went to jail?
I know.
For directing
in
a
murders.
lot of roundabout ways, the directing of some things.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy didn't.
Nope.
What? Does he know what's under the Vatican? Does he know what's in the libraries?
He knows.
Is that what this is? Does he know that we've made contact?
Knows.
Is he aware of this? Is this what it is? They're trying. Hey, so 2022. He's obviously he's gone.
Yeah,
he's gone. But still,
he's long past.
Interesting.
Yeah, so France was tired of this. They were tired. Remember, they had filed charges. So they actually sentenced him without him even present to 4 years in prison and a $7,000 fine, which would be about $30,000 today. And he went back into hiding when he found out about this. And now he was in Hemet, California. It's April 1978. Homie's hanging around Hemet, California. Oy.
It's nice in the winter.
Sorry to everyone who lives
It's nice in the winter. There's some picturesque views out there.
Yes, that's true. But he cut off all contact with almost everyone now, including his family. And that was pretty much permanently after this. He cut off contact. This was also when he wrote some of his most famous books, including Battlefield Earth in 1982 and Mission Earth, the series.
How was he able to publish those?
He still had a publisher.
And what did he sell under L. Ron Hubbard?
Yeah.
And no one thought to ask the publisher where he was?
He just wasn't extradited. Couldn't extradite him to France. There's a lot of legal loopholes you had to jump through to get anything done. And when you had the money and the time and the networking, you could get away with a lot back then. Remember, Al Capone went to jail for tax evasion, not for any of the other things he ever did. So it's just interesting. How many serial killers or these big criminals do you hear got pulled over for a broken taillight? Stuff
a lot
like that.
of them.
Didn't Ted Bundy get pulled over for there's always these weird happenstances and the stuff they get away with for so long.
Well, I guess my observation is that it's just I guess he was a big fish at that time, but he wasn't an unbelievably big fish. He was a big fish, but he wasn't an unbelievably big fish.
Even today, he still holds the world record for the most works published of all time.
Yeah, but that's who
published
cares?
author.
Who cares?
Just a big.
Who cares?
Big name.
There's a lot of people that hold the record for a lot of things. It's very popular to do now.
Well, David Miscavige, you may have heard this name before. He became the religion's de facto leader in Hubbard's absence, and he is still today the leader of Scientology. His daughter, Hubbard's daughter, Suzette, actually became Miss Cavage's personal assistant / maid, which is interesting.
Interesting turn of events.
Yeah. But in the famous words of Hamilton from the play, death doesn't discriminate.
Wow.
Yes, I'm always thinking of
Wow.
Hamilton, right? In the last years of his life, Hubbard was chilling in Creston, California. Again, moving around. And this time he was living in a luxury motorhome. This man was deep in hiding. He only communicated with a select group of spokespersons. He spent millions redesigning a ranch house that he didn't even live in. It remained uninhabited on his property. And they built a race track for the horses. They had an observation tower.
You know what's funny is people aren't hiding when they do that. We knew where he was. This is not like some sort of like, look, when I say Jason Bourne, I'm not talking about Matt Damon. Okay. Everyone knows Matt Damon's the real Jason Bourne. Okay. I'm not talking about, what's his name? Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible. We're talking about L. Ron Hubbard. The government knew where he was. They just chose to not do anything about it, as they choose to not do anything about a lot of things that happen, especially within the entertainment industry for some reason. All the people that we happen to appreciate are all somehow involved in some very insidious things. So I guess it's interesting to me.
Yeah, well, it's just, there's always some guy living in a motorhome building a mansion who's never going to live in it, right? It's like we have all this land and all this money, and they're just like, it's like Winchester Mystery House. You know that?
I'm surprised that thing even exists.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. But he maintained control over Scientology. He actually wrote orders that were like passed through his underlings, whoever was talking to him. And he received tons of money. It's estimated that he made approximately $200 million by 1982. In 1982 money.
There was a lot of people around at the time that made that much money.
Well, the IRS...
By a lot of people, I mean a very select few of people.
The IRS was going to charge him for tax fraud.
Well, that worked last time, so...
And they were going to go after him. That much was clear. And he had a chronic pancreatitis issue. He was a pretty sick puppy by this point, and he suffered a stroke on January 17th of 1986. He died a week later. His body was cremated and scattered at sea, but the Scientologists claimed that he had decided to leave his body and continue his research on another planet. He was just clear.
Well,
he departed because he couldn't die if he was...
He was that good.
Yeah, he was that good.
He was that clear.
He left.
Wow.
He left.
Wow, that's so serendipitous. Like, what planet?
I don't know.
Well, how do you travel there?
I don't know. I heard similar things, from other groups of people. Like, what's that one group of people who...
Hale Bob?
Yes.
Yeah,
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, well, they didn't go to another... Did they go to another planet? I think there was like a spaceship, right? That was what they had said, that there was a spaceship. Well, yeah, but clearly they didn't. They stayed here.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
I know.
They were here.
I know.
We
that was
found
another
them.
tragic event. But yeah, he died. He died in 1986, which wasn't that long ago. Can you believe that? I was born only a couple of years after that.
I'm honestly surprised that was how he passed away. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like there's so many other ways that you'd think, based off of all of his quote unquote enemies, that would have been way more convenient.
Well, besides Quentin, remember, who had sadly committed suicide, Hubbard put a trust out there for Mary Sue and her children with him, so his third wife. Plus, he added Catherine, his daughter from his first wife, Polly. Remember her? He then disinherited his children with his second wife, Sarah. L. Ron Hubbard Jr. changed his name and tried to sue for control of the estate, and Hubbard denied the parentage of the younger sister, Alexis, Sarah's younger daughter. They accepted settlements after the church and the estate threatened litigation against the two children, which is awfully sad. Awfully sad. Mostly everything else went to the church. They still preserve it all today, much of it in titanium containers buried underneath the Trementina base in New Mexico. It has the church's logo bulldozed on top of it so you can see it from space. And he is, again, today, still the world's most published author with 1,084 works under his belt. and the church's model of what they call an operating thetan. He is not considered a god by Scientology. But that is the life of L. Ron Hubbard. It is a very, like you said, would make a great movie, I think. But there's a lot going on. And that man lived all over the place.
I have a lot of thoughts.
I'm sure you do.
Specifically about Waco.
Waco, Texas.
There was another event that happened
the Branch
there.
Davidians?
That happened to the Branch Davidians. But the same fate has not happened. I'm not suggesting it should. The same fate has not happened to what is clearly, well, what could be contrived and observed by some individuals with their own opinions as a little suspect of what would be considered a religion.
Well, the U.S. government says that they went after the Branch Davidians because they had a huge amount of weapons. The Scientology, as far as we know, I don't know, don't have the same concerns behind them.
Right. You would never think that some entity that has that much money and the influence and the ability to bury a bunch of things with their logo on it, telling everyone where it is from space, you'd never think that they would ever do anything squirrely.
You know what's so funny is where we used to live in California. Did I say this in the previous episode? I might have.
Yes.
Part one.
Yeah. Specifically in San Diego. Yep. Where they built the construction company.
Yeah. It just little things you don't notice. It's the same thing with like a Freemason symbol. You walk past something and you're like, oh, that's a Freemason symbol.
Wait a sec though. Because here's, and we should eventually look into that too. Cause that would be an interesting, series, really, because almost every single founding father was a part of that. But I truly think that it's just, that's one of those things where I feel like for some reason it's still around, but it's only still around because everyone's kind of forgotten about it. I can't imagine the numbers that were quote unquote reported. Maybe I can't imagine, but I could maybe suspect, possibly, that the numbers that they've reported on their followers may or may not possibly be not totally factual.
I don't know. This is not about Scientology.
I know. I just think it's just interesting. It's just interesting.
Yeah,
it's just interesting.
It is interesting. What I think is crazy is that man published almost 1,100 pieces of work. Like, I need to get on it.
Are they any good though?
I mean, we have Battlefield Earth in our bookshelf. I've been meaning to read it.
Your dad talks about how it's such a fantastic novel.
And I kind of want to read it.
Well, he said that about Dune, and...
Oh, we got a guy who's not a fan of Dune in the house. Uh-oh.
It's not that I'm not a fan of Dune. I'm not a fan of the author's writing. I can't remember his name, but his writing is very... It's very... it's just very interesting. I think the creativity aspect of it's phenomenal. I think that the idea is great. The commentary and the underlying messages are good, but the style of writing is just not my cup of tea.
Well, to each their own. I quite like Dune.
Did you ever read the book?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I have it. Silly.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's L. Ron Hubbard's life, guys. I mean, there's more to it, as there always is, but that is the gist. A man of many stories, that is for sure.
Yeah.
And he must be excellent at packing a U-Haul.
Yeah, I have my opinions that they haven't changed. I've got my biases that I had prior are still held. To play devil's advocate, though, I do think that he lived a very emotionally traumatizing existence. And obviously I would not wish bad things on him, because I think that obviously it's whatever came to him already happened. But still, I do think that humans are humans and we have our issues, and that's why we have this show, because it's good to give some
good,
sort of
the bad,
humanizing,
and the ugly.
Some humanizing nature to some characters within history, L. Ron Hubbard being one of them. I inferred that we would do Aleister Crowley next.
Well, we also inferred in the last episode, and I started notes on Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, yes.
Vlad the Third.
We'll do him, and then we'll do Aleister Crowley.
Oh, get ready, guys. We're doing spooky season.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the episode. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Hope this wrapped up and put a nice little bow on what we know of L. Ron Hubbard's life. If you like what you hear, if you liked what you see, go ahead and give us a follow on Instagram, a follow on TikTok. We are also on Facebook, and give us a subscription on YouTube and a like and leave a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts. Additionally, I believe audio episodes are on Tuesdays. So this is the part 1 we'll be releasing on what would be tomorrow. I know we had a little bit of a break between Michael Jackson and now because we had some stuff we were doing. But every Tuesday, audio episodes, and then Wednesdays will be the videos. So
get ready, folks.
Yes. So yeah. But yeah, anything else to add to L. Ron Hubbard?
No, quite the send-off. We hope that you enjoyed.
See you soon.